if I'm being honest, I find male vocals in heavy music typically very boring. There is very little new that can be done with men getting, oh, he's done a singing bit, oh, now he's growling, oh, doesn't he sound angry? It's something that's worn really, really thin, and people are still doing it to death. I think a key thing to mention about Jolly Christmas is her vocal style, the approach. We actually discussed something very similar, I think, back when we interviewed Katie Jane Garside of Queen Adrena, Daisy Chainsaw, numerous other projects. Katie Jane Garside and Julie Christmas have a very similar quality to their vocal. They've got a bit of range. They've got a manic energy to it. They can go very soft and eerie and sort of like almost like music box cutesy with it. And then ferocious screams hidden in there as well. And they use all of that sometimes within the range of not just one song, but one passage. And that kind of volatility was something that made both singers really, really click with me. I loved the variety that was in there. Julie Christmas can sound incredibly fragile and frequently does, especially in the record that we're doing. As I say though, she's said herself in some interviews that she was most inspired by singers that had really strong ranges and high notes. She mentioned Cyndi Lauper and I think Aretha Franklin as two female singers when she was growing up that she really looked up to. Although she did mention that a big turning point in her musical career came due to a car trip that she went on, where she ended up listening to Tom Waits. And Tom Waits was somebody she'd always been quite resistant to. And then she ended up on this car trip with a friend and her sister. And her sister was sticking on nothing but like metal. She was like a big Sepultura bolt thrower fan. And meanwhile, her friend put on half an hour of Tom Waits, and she said it just suddenly clicked. And she got a lot out of Tom Waits. And again, he is a guy that we've spoken about, certainly in his later career, where there's a manic energy, like a kind of slight madness in his vocals, especially around about that kind of Mule Variations era and, you know, Big in Japan.
Bit of those extended vocal techniques, extended range stuff, which all the metal singers use. But I think her voice is the key thing. It's astounding. When she's singing the kind of softer stuff, it reminds me of Björk quite a lot. Björk has also got a large vocal range.
There's a couple of points in this where I think she does sound, in her career, I'll pick them out, where she sounds almost a bit like Björk. I mean, I think there's a gender dynamic to extreme vocal sections, you know, there's a different quality that we could probably unpack via an extended thesis on male versus female rage and aggression, and I'm sure there's PhDs out there that have done that. But I do think the singers themselves subtly play in that. I think Katie Jane Garside, Courtney Love, Julie Christmas, they know their most ferocious moments have an added sense of shock because it's coming from a female vocalist, you know, participating in a largely male vocal realm.
That's one of the things that made Rollo Tomasi, when they started, like, really stand out.
Yeah.
You know, when you see them, like, all of them going absolutely tonto, and it's a woman who's doing that really fucking feral vocal. And when you see it live, and that scene was very male dominated, that was one of the standout factors of like, okay, that's coming from a woman. That sounds sexist because it was sexist. Do you know what I mean? That's what the thinking was at the time.
I think on both our behalfs, I can maybe steer that in a direction that resolves quite nicely, right? Because we'd be stupid to not acknowledge that there is a form of a novelty factor there when in a male-dominated space, especially really heavy music, bands that are fronted by female vocalists who have a particularly intense and confrontational style. Yes, there is unavoidably a novelty factor in there because it's a male-dominated, not just a male-dominated industry, but a male-dominated part of the industry. However, if you were to ask me who are my favourite vocalists, there's guys in there that I think are great. They're not actually all very good singers. I think David Yau's a brilliant vocalist. He's definitely not a good singer. It's the personality. But especially in heavy music, I think that Julie Christmas and Katie Jane Garside in particular are top 5 for me in heavy music. Because if I'm being honest, I find male vocals in heavy music typically very boring. There is very little new that can be done with men getting, oh, he's done a singing bit, oh, now he's growling, oh, doesn't he sound angry? it's something that's worn really, really thin, and people are still doing it to death. And I think we spoke a wee bit about this on the Cult of Luna episode. But I was like, Cult of Luna at points are musically brilliant, but it inevitably just descends into, oh, this song has to get more intense, and you're like, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that your only trick?
Mm.
And I honestly would. I mean, I like Unsane. I love Chris's voice. He doesn't do that. He's just got like this naturally raspy, horrible, brilliant, horrible voice. I don't think there's a lot of vocalists just are gifted with a really character-filled voice and can be brilliant, heavy singers without just resorting to dead, rote, cliched vocal things. Jacob Bannon has a lot of range in the heavy field. I like it when he does the more post-hardcore stuff, but when he does the more black metal stuff, he's good, blah, blah, blah. So he covers a lot of bases. But generally speaking, I think male vocalists in heavy bands are more often than not boring. And actually, Julie Christmas and Katie Jane Garside, putting aside all of the inverted commas novelty factor of the fact that they're female vocalists in a traditionally male space, are just better. There's more range, there's more violence in the way that their style whiplashes from one to another. One thing that is open to them as an option that I'm going to say it's not open to men, I suppose it is open to men, but very few men choose to utilise it, is the kind of coos and whispers and stuff. Like that is hugely dynamic and really, really effective. Sometimes a little bit too much, but when it's used well, it's hugely effective. Tell me a male vocalist that does that. The only one I could think of that even tries it because he's so fascinated with The Cure and New Romantics and stuff is maybe Chino Moreno, who's done that, I think, now and then, and sometimes very, very well. But by and large, male heavy vocalists never attempt that. And I think any that did would probably sound irritating